Hey guys, this is Mike Charleston, and this is an information video for the Pennsylvania Shindig 2020, May 7th through the 10th. Now we're going to break this up in a couple different videos so it's not so long. So we're going to talk about what a shindig is, and then we're going to talk about the housing and the prices, and then some frequently asked questions, what we'll do. All right, so what is a shindig? Where have you been? Now, seriously, the shindigs, we have put on 3 shindigs in Mississippi. There has been other shindigs throughout the country. There's been, I think Texas is going to have its 7th this year. Florida, maybe 5. I don't know how many they put on, maybe 4. I don't know. So Michael and Debbie Pearl of No Greater Joy Ministries started these things called a shindig many years ago. The first one was in Texas at Big Sandy. We were there, and it was a real big one. And so they kind of felt like young people and families needed to get together and meet. And there was kind of in a homeschool community, it's sometimes our pool of friends is kind of short, and not short, but small. And they wanted to kind of broaden it a little bit. Well, they did, because in Texas, I don't know how many people showed up, but I think there was like 1,300, 1,500 people, something like that. And then their second one was in Missouri, and then they had a third one in North Carolina. North Carolina had over 2,000 people. It was a huge one. So yes, they broadened the pond. The pond turned into a lake. But the Pearls kind of got tired of putting on the shindigs because it's a lot of work, and they're getting older, and it's just a headache to organize. But they still like the idea of getting together. And so they kind of encouraged people to just put on these mini shindigs, what they called mini shindigs back in the day, and 7 years ago. And so Texas kind of did the first one, and it was just these smaller groups, no more than 300 people, and more intimate. And you can get to know people a lot more. You spend the whole weekend, not as many sessions, and it was a real wonderful idea. But other people kind of branched out and started doing it, and we decided to do one in Mississippi about 3 years ago, and it's been a success, and it's been a wonderful thing. And it's been a wonderful thing for our family. Our kids have met many friends throughout the country. We have a lot of friends in Texas area, in the Mississippi area, Florida area, Tennessee, Kentucky. So because of these shindigs, we've met a lot of people. And we've actually seen a lot of people we know and friends of ours. Their children have met other children who are older, and they've gotten married. So we've had a number of marriages that have come from these shindigs. Which leads me to another point: misconceptions of the shindig. So we've had a number of people who did not want to come to a shindig because they thought all it was just a bunch of single people, and it's trying to hook up people. No, that's not at all. If you go to these shindigs, you'll be surprised at how many families are there, how many young people are there. Our first one that we went to was in 2012. My oldest daughter, my oldest child, she was 12. So, and I have 7 children, so imagine 7 kids under 12 going to a shindig. We weren't going to find them a mate, not at all. We were going for fellowship, and we were going to find people that were somewhat like-minded, mostly like-minded. And we found that at the shindig. Now, not everybody at the shindig believes the same things. Not everybody at the shindig is exactly alike. You have some people who are a little bit more liberal in their dress, and you have some that are very much more conservative. You have some that will do X, Y, and Z, and some that won't. You have that in every big group. But for the most part, we found a group of people that we could call friends and fellowship with. And it had nothing to do with finding my daughter a mate when she was 12 years old, for crying out loud. She wasn't ready. But what we did, what we thought was wise, was as we go to these events, we just get to know people more and more and expand our circle of influence. Our circle of friends gets bigger and bigger. And that by the time she's 20, like she is now, there's a lot more options out there, and that we know these people throughout the years, so they're not a total stranger. We've kind of seen them throughout the years. So that is a big misconception that people have, is that the Shindig is only for people singles. And we had some families last year ask, the families can go? We thought it was only for young people. I said, no, families are very much welcome and encouraged, actually. But that is a misconception. It is not for just singles, and it's not to push marriage. We're actually trying to go away from that. We believe that families are an integral part of finding spouses, working together. So the fathers, the mothers, everyone is involved in finding spouses, not just sending off your kid to a shindig to find a spouse. So we're very much big believers in the families working together and families getting to know other families. And so that is kind of why we wanted to do the Pennsylvania Shindig. So like I've said before, we have done 3 years in Mississippi. And because we live down in Louisiana, we live nowhere near Pennsylvania. But we've had a number of people ask if there's ever going to be a shindig up north. And we feel sorry for you northerners. We've had shindigs in Texas, in Florida, and Mississippi. So the deep south has been covered. But you northerners just can't get it together, I guess. I'm just kidding. I'm from Indiana, so I can tease you. But so we had a number of people ask about shindigs up north. And no one was really answering the call, and we put on a few. So after we've had 3 under our belt, we figured we can do one up north. So we found this camp and we went with it. So we're trying to work with a little bit more people that live up there and maybe hand it off to them for the years to come, because we live in Louisiana. So anyways, that is why we did the shindig up in Pennsylvania this year, try to draw that northern crowd, because what came out of the shindig the last few years are these other events called Days of Fellowship. Now the Days of Fellowship aren't like shindigs. They're kind of like shindigs, but you don't stay in hotels and you don't stay in all together. They're like 1-day events, maybe sometimes they're 2-day events. But they're more regional, where people try to get together a little closer to home. And so there's a lot of events going on because of these things, the shindigs. And so that's what we hope to get started, is get a lot of these community being built up. That is I'm a big believer in community and fellowship and the local body getting together, and I think that this will do that. So anyway, that's what a shindig. Besides that, the shindig is a spiritual thing. You'll hear good, solid Bible teaching, encouragement on family, child issues, marriage issues, things like that. You have a bunch of families that are getting together who are seeking God and who are in the same boat. We all most likely are homeschool families that have a number of kids, and we have a lot of questions, and we can encourage one another. We can, pick each other's brains and say, well, what did you do here? What did you do there? And some of us may have a lot of problems in our families, and so we have a lot of people to help us with that. There's a number of families. Hopefully we'll have like 40 to 50 families show up at this event, and that's a big encouragement. The singing, the preaching, just the fellowship, lunchtime, outside playing games together. If you've never been to a shindig, it is a very fun event. It's encouraging to just see a bunch of young people, most likely, most of the time, playing in a godly way where they're preferring one another. There's no fighting. It's just a very peaceful time. So hopefully that'll give you a good idea of what a shindig is. If you have more questions about one, find someone that's been to one. The best answer is usually a testimony. So find someone that's been. Ask them what they like about a shindig, and you'll probably get a different answer. So anyway, I hope you appreciate this video. Hopefully you'll go on and watch the other ones, the prices and the lodging and the question and answers. If you have any other questions, just go to our website, pashindig.com, and hopefully we can answer all your questions. Thank you very much. All right, well, we are here at church today, and I know we just went over the video of what a shindig is, and I said maybe you should ask someone, and I thought about Kenny. So Kenny was here, and he's going to give a little testimony of what a shindig kind of meant to him and what a shindig is to him. So Kenny, what is a shindig to you? What made you want to go to a shindig, and what was your expectations of a shindig?
Mike, we didn't know what to expect. We were in a corporate church before, and before we attended our first shindig, but what we lacked was like-minded fellowship. And one of the things that really bothered me and my wife was we just noticed that our kids weren't in youth groups and so forth, but just a little bit of interaction with the youth there, we saw our children's hearts being drawn away. So we were praying to the Lord and crying out to the Lord for like-minded fellowship, opportunities to gather with like-minded believers that shared the same ideas we had for raising our family. And not quite sure, I don't remember exactly how we found out about the shindig. It was definitely a God thing, bringing the Mississippi Shindig across our path, but we didn't know what to expect. We were wondering, would these be like-minded people? But we had to give it a shot after some prayer, and felt the Lord leading us to attend. Your family was the first family we met there,
right,
at registration, and meeting Sarah and some of your kids. You were pretty busy orchestrating some things in the beginning there, but right away, we realized, hey, these are like-minded families. And then the families we met there, it was a wonderful experience. Meeting like-minded families, getting around other believers who want to raise their children in the Lord, who want to see their children fulfill God's will and God's plan for their life, homeschooling families that just shared the same ideas for how they wanted to raise their kids. A focus on fathers being the fathers they're called to be, and mothers fulfilling their role as mothers and wives, dads fulfilling their roles as husbands and fathers. There was such a heart and a desire for that. It was refreshing, and it was just a great experience. And then we started coming to home church afterwards.
Well, what I like about your story is that Kenny didn't know anybody. Like, there's a number of people who kind of don't know anything about a shindig, and they want to, well, I'll go if you go type thing. But you didn't know anybody, and so you just went not knowing what to expect, and then a whole different world opened up to you that, hey, we were talking upstairs earlier, and you were saying how we're not the only ones. Kind of explain that, where now your daughter realizes, hey, There's other weirdos out there.
Yeah, what we experienced in the corporate church was, here we are homeschooling. There weren't really any other homeschool families there. And we were raising our children with some conservative values, which I think everyone that is going to the Shindig that's would share that same philosophy. But we didn't have any like-minded folks there. So that was really one of the primary things that was drawing our children's hearts away. It got to a point where one of my daughters was a teenager, and she just kind of felt like, hey, if I don't adapt to the way some of these other kids are, I'm going to go through life without friends, because there's no other parents out there like mine. There's no one raising their children like my mom and dad are, and all these other kids are allowed to do things that I'm not allowed to do. So my parents must be weird, and the way they're raising me must be wrong. Well, we go to the Shindig, and one of the biggest takeaways on the way home, I'll never forget, she says, wow, Dad, she says, I met so many people who had the same convictions that we have, and their children have the same rules that that we have. They're raising their children the same way, and it was refreshing to her. And the biggest thing, I shared this with you, I recently ran into the pastor from the church I used to go to. We're still friends. I love him dearly. But I was sharing with him that over the past couple of years that we've been going to home church with you guys and going to the Shindig, and my daughter's realizing that there is this world of like-minded believers like us. The Lord has worked in our heart and drawn our heart back to us. And we've tied those heartstrings, which is critical in raising our kids. And seeing them not at 18, 19, or 20 go out in the world.
Running away.
And and I mean, I see you guys.
Well, how important, not to interrupt, sorry, but how important do you think that is for your daughter? You have one daughter that's a lot older than the rest of your kids, and the social aspect of her life is very important right now. And so how important is that for her to get around a bunch of other like-minded believers? I mean, you touched on that a little bit, but just explain a little bit more just how important that was for her. Because a lot of people think that coming to Shindig, you're trying to find a mate. It's not about that. That might happen, but the thrust is really just families getting together, but especially in the teenage years, and I know people don't like the teenage word, but in those teenage years, they're developing friendships and things like that, and this is one of those events where there are a lot of people in the same boat, and they have lifelong friends now.
Sure, no, it's extremely important. One of the things, and it was very heartwarming to me to hear this from my oldest daughter, who's a teenager. And she said, Dad, she said, I had been praying for some things, and she said, I've seen God answer so many prayers. And one of those big prayers was friends, like-minded friends, to where she wouldn't have to change what she believes and her convictions, but friends that share those same beliefs and same convictions. And it's extremely important. Our kids need fellowship. We need fellowship, but our kids do. And if they don't have that like-minded fellowship, they're probably going to end up being pulled into the world.
Sure. Because they're curious.
Exactly.
And so we don't give them something to reach for. They're going to jump.
Sure.
And the Pearls wrote a book about that, Jumping Ship, and I thought that's kind of the reason why we did the Shindigs, is to kind of open up the pools we talked about earlier. But yeah, that's kind of what we wanted to kind of talk about, kind of give a little testimony of people who actually have been to the Shindig, who didn't know anybody prior, and wanted to just go to find like-minded fellowship, and you pretty much found it. And it opened up other avenues. So they've not only just made friends with us, but there's been other people that they've stayed in contact with. So thanks a lot, Kenny.
Well,
and
there's two more things I want to add to Mike before we wrap up. But one thing is, and you touched on this earlier, and we didn't finish the thought. Our first Shindig, we didn't know anybody. We knew absolutely no one, and it was so refreshing. We were so welcomed by so many people. There were people who did know each other, but we didn't go, and one of the concerns we had was, would there be these groups and we just don't fit in? We've experienced that before. It wasn't like that at all. And we were made so many different connections the first year, newer connections the second year.
Sure.
And now what we did our second year was we tried to make sure we looked for some unfamiliar faces,
right,
and welcome them in, because we knew what it was like to go that first year and be welcomed.
Right.
That. And then the other thing is, I would encourage you, if you're watching this video, haven't been to a Shindig, if you've been to a Shindig, you know what to expect. If you haven't been, whether you got some like-minded fellowship, maybe a few believers, if you're fortunate enough to be a family who has some like-minded fellowship in your life right now, that's wonderful. You can never have too much of it. It's great to know that, hey, I've got friends in Florida, I've got friends in Texas, I got friends in Tennessee. Right. We went up to Northwest Arkansas for vacation, reached out to one of the families, and we were almost able to, we couldn't quite coordinate schedules, but it was great to know, hey, we can go to Northwest Arkansas and connect with a family from the Shindig. But right. I would definitely encourage you, especially if you're looking for some like-minded fellowship, attend the Shindig. You won't be sorry. It's going to be a great experience.
Absolutely. Well, thanks a lot, Kenny. And hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and hopefully see you at the Shindig. Thank you.